A lavish mansion, where love blossoms amidst the scorching sands, a single mother and a lonely billionaire. Can they find true happiness beyond the chains of their past and the wounds they carry? A heartwarming tale of forgiveness, healing, and the enduring power of love. In a world of ruthless choices, where despair lurks in the shadows, Ava, a young woman, faces countless hardships, burdened by the weight of life pressing down on her shoulders. Her beloved son, Brian, is the only beacon of hope in her stormy existence. But as challenges mount and the walls close in, Ava finds herself standing at the edge of an unthinkable decision. With no way out, no light at the end of the tunnel, she steps into a strange and unsettling world. A peculiar auction where women are treated as mere objects, their company purchased by wealthy and powerful men. For Ava, this is not an easy choice, but a fragile opportunity, a lone lifeline in a sea of despair. Huddled in a secluded corner of the grand, opulent hall, Ava feels the crushing weight of the decisions that have led her to this harrowing place. Her heart pounds wildly, each beat a tolling bell, of fear and uncertainty about the bleak future that awaits her. Yet, in her mind, the image of her little boy, Brian, shines brightly like a tiny sun, safely cared for by a kind elderly neighbor on this dark night. Overdue bills pile up like mountains, eviction threats echo like thunderclaps, and the long nights of hunger gnawing at her stomach have pushed her to the brink of this unimaginable choice. The event's organizer, a polished man in a flawless black suit with a smile as artificial as a painted mask, approaches her, his voice smooth yet calculated as he instructs, "Remember, Ava, keep a composed smile and never make direct eye contact with the guests." His cold words slice through her heart like a blade before he turns away, leaving her alone in a sea of strangers. The grand hall is teeming with powerful men in luxurious attire, their eyes scanning each woman like art collectors admiring priceless exhibits. Ava's throat tightens, a wave of shame and revulsion rising within her. Her name is called, slicing through the heavy silence. "Lot number 23. The organizer announces in a theatrical tone, laced with calculation. Ava's legs tremble like autumn leaves. As she ascends the steps to the brightly lit stage, the searing spotlight blazes down on her, the intense heat making her forehead glisten with cold sweat. She tries to hold her head high, but she can feel the predatory, covetous gazes piercing through her. A rare beauty indeed. The organizer continues his florid speech, showering her with hollow adjectives that only make her feel more exposed, more vulnerable before the crowd. Murmurs of approval ripple through the audience like waves crashing against the shore. Then, suddenly, a deep, commanding voice cuts through the commotion. $1 million. A stunned silence sweeps across the hall. All eyes turn in astonishment toward a man sitting in the last row, his tanned skin, sharp gaze like a dagger, and an aura of undeniable power. He exudes an icy authority, like a king reigning over his domain. Jacob Elijah Hall, a renowned Arab tycoon known for his enigmatic wealth and reclusive nature, has made the first bid, a staggering amount that leaves everyone speechless. The event organizer, visibly taken aback by the unexpected opening bid, stammers as he repeats the figure, as if doubting his own ears. No other bids follow. "Sold," he declares, his voice tinged with both shock and satisfaction. Ava feels her legs go weak, but she forces herself to remain composed as she steps off the stage, back into the brutal reality she now faces. Jacob approaches her, his gaze unreadable, his voice as cold as ice. "We need to discuss the terms," he states calmly, extending a hand, signaling her to follow. Ava hesitates, but eventually walks beside him into a private room, where the fate she sealed on stage is about to be formally set in motion. The spacious room is adorned with exquisite, expensive furnishings. Jacob gestures for Ava to sit in a plush armchair, before stepping over to a nearby table and picking up an envelope that had been prepared in advance. "This is the contract," he says evenly, handing it to her. "Read it carefully." Ava's hands tremble as she takes the document, her fingers ice cold. The silence in the room grows thick and suffocating as she begins to scan the terms. Her breath quickens as she reaches the most crucial clause. "You want me to have a child, and then leave it with you?" she asks, her voice quivering like a fragile leaf in the wind. Jacob crosses his arms, his expression unyielding, and nods. "I need an heir. Once the child is born, you will leave." The contract states this clearly. Ava shoots to her feet, a surge of anger and fear flooding her veins. "I can't do this. I won't abandon my own child." Jacob narrows his eyes, but his voice remains disturbingly calm. "You knew what you were getting into when you entered that auction. There is no room for second thoughts now. This is inhumane. Ava snaps, gripping the contract tightly, as if she might tear it apart. Do you think you can just buy a child and discard the mother like a used toy? Jacob steps closer, his presence overwhelming, dominating the space between them. I paid $1 million for you, Ava. This is not some passing whim. You have no other choice now. Ava's heart hammers violently in her chest. She knows she has walked into a trap, a situation she cannot easily escape. Jacob places an expensive Mont Blanc pen on the table before her, his gaze firm and unwavering. Sign the contract. Once the child is born, you will receive your payment and be free to continue your life. Ava stares at the document, her hands shaking with fury and despair. She thinks of Brian, of the sacrifices she has made to secure a better future for him. Tears threaten to spill, but she swallows them back. Jacob, this isn't right, she murmurs, sinking back into the chair, as if all strength has drained from her body. Jacob leans forward, his intense gaze piercing through her. Right or wrong doesn't matter here. What matters is that you honor the agreement. Ava knows she has no way out. With a heart as heavy as lead, she picks up the pen, her hand trembling as she signs her name on the cruel contract. Jacob takes the document, his voice as cold as ever. Good. Tomorrow morning, we will conduct the necessary medical tests, and you will be taken to my estate to rest. With that, he turns and leaves the room, leaving Ava alone with her tangled thoughts and crushing regret. She stares at her shaky signature on the contract, feeling as if she has just sealed her own fate in an unbreakable bond. The next day, a sleek, jet-black limousine, long and imposing like a silent beast, waited for Ava in front of the small, run-down apartment where she had once lived. Her farewell to Brian was choked with emotion, brief like a passing breeze, yet it carved itself deep into Ava's heart like invisible daggers. She forced a weak smile and told her son, in a voice trembling with suppressed tears, that she had to go away for work for a few months, promising to call whenever she could. The innocent child, unaware of the storm brewing in his mother's heart, waved at her with a bright, carefree smile. The journey to the mansion passed in heavy, suffocating silence. Ava stared blankly out of the car window, her eyes dull as she watched the barren desert landscape gradually give way to extravagant, modern structures that stood tall and proud against the blue sky. When the car finally stopped in front of the estate, its sheer grandeur left her speechless. A towering wrought iron gate, intricately designed, slowly opened as if unveiling another world, revealing a vast, meticulously maintained garden and a palatial mansion that seemed to have stepped out of a fairy tale. Jacob was already waiting at the entrance, his expression as cold and unreadable as ever, like in. That evening, in the quiet atmosphere of dinner, Jacob surprised Ava by sitting at the same table as her. Previously, her meals had always been solitary, taken quietly in her private room or in some secluded corner of the vast mansion. His presence at the table, even though he maintained his usual calm demeanor, carried an invisible weight that filled the space, making it impossible for Ava to ignore or dismiss. "Have you started to adjust?" he asked, his deep, husky voice breaking the tense silence as he poured himself a glass of rich red wine. I think so," Ava replied softly, trying to keep her voice steady, not allowing the turmoil inside her to show. Jacob observed her intently for a long moment, his gaze piercing, as if attempting to read the unspoken thoughts hidden deep within her mind. "I know this hasn't been easy," he said slowly, his tone slightly softer than usual. "But I hope you understand that all of this is necessary." For a fleeting moment, Ava wanted to ask, necessary for whom? But the question caught in her throat, unable to form into words. Instead, she simply nodded silently and lowered her gaze, focusing on her meal in the heavy silence. There was something in Jacob's voice, a heaviness, a buried sorrow beneath his cold, imposing exterior, that hinted at an invisible emotional burden he carried, a secret weight he had carefully concealed over the past weeks. Ava soon began to notice Jacob's quiet gestures of kindness, subtle yet thoughtful acts that spoke of a hidden care. He remained distant, maintaining his aloof exterior, but his concern for her well-being was evident in small, deliberate ways. One day, after Ava had casually mentioned to Amina, the housekeeper, how she missed a few traditional dishes from her homeland, a lavish tray of food, specially prepared to her tastes, was brought to her. "Mr. Jacob asked me to prepare these for you," Amina explained with a warm, gentle smile. Ava was taken aback, touched by the unexpected gesture. But she remained silent, unable to fully decipher the deeper meaning behind Jacob's actions. On one hand, he remained cold and detached, as if their relationship was nothing more than a distant, lifeless agreement. Yet on the other, he quietly ensured her comfort in ways that were thoughtful, almost intimate. One quiet morning, when Ava woke up, she was surprised to find a collection of books neatly arranged on the bedside table. Among them were romance novels and short story anthologies she had once casually mentioned in conversation with Amina. A warm feeling spread through her chest as she realized that Jacob, the man who seemed indifferent and unfeeling, had not only been listening, but had also remembered the little details that mattered to her. A defining moment in their complex relationship came when Ava wandered into the music room of the mansion. The door was slightly ajar, and the gentle melody of a piano, flowing like a rippling stream, drifted down the hallway, drawing her in. Curious, Ava pushed the door open, and was stunned to find Jacob seated at the grand piano, his fingers gliding effortlessly over the keys, weaving a melody so rich with emotion it took her breath away. His skill was beyond anything she had imagined. You play the piano?" she asked, unable to hide her surprise. Jacob looked up, a flicker of surprise and discomfort crossing his face at being caught in such a private, vulnerable moment. "My mother taught me when I was a child," he murmured, his voice quieter than usual. Then, almost hesitantly, one evening, in the stillness of dinner, Jacob introduced an unexpected topic, like a stone cast into a tranquil lake, sending ripples outward. "I've been thinking about renovating a few things in the estate," he said, his tone calm and casual, as if discussing the weather. "Just a few small changes, to make this place feel warmer and more welcoming." Ava raised an eyebrow, her gaze reflecting a mix of surprise and curiosity. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly, her voice as gentle as a passing breeze. "I want to create a space where a family can truly feel at home," Jacob replied, his deep voice carrying an unfamiliar warmth and softness that Ava had never heard before. He subtly avoided her searching gaze, as if uneasy about his own vulnerability. In that moment, Ava felt her heart tighten, a surge of indescribable emotion rising within her. It was the first time Jacob had ever spoken of a distant future, a future that extended beyond the cold confines of their contractual arrangement and hinted at something far greater, far more meaningful. Yet, reason reminded her that between this hopeful vision and their harsh reality lay a vast chasm, filled with countless obstacles they would have to overcome before the dream of a family could ever become real. On a golden afternoon, as Ava wandered leisurely through the lush garden, she happened upon Amina carefully carrying a tray of tea and fragrant biscuits. The kind-hearted housekeeper appeared more radiant than usual, her face glowing with an unspoken joy. Unable to contain her curiosity, Ava softly inquired, "You seem especially cheerful today, Amina. Has something happened?" Amina beamed, her eyes shimmering like stars in the night sky. "It's truly wonderful to witness the changes happening here, Miss Ava," she said gently, her voice as soothing as a spring breeze. "This estate has never felt so full of life." Ava felt a rush of warmth rise to her cheeks, a sudden wave of embarrassment and self-consciousness washing over her. She knew exactly what Amina was alluding to, the subtle transformation in her relationship with Jacob, the warmth and renewal she had brought to this once cold and desolate mansion. Despite her lingering uncertainties about the future, Ava couldn't deny that something beautiful and extraordinary was quietly taking root between her and Jacob, like budding shoots stretching toward the sunlight after a long, harsh winter. As time flowed on, Ava began to notice that Jacob was changing too. He spent more time with her, shedding the distant, aloof demeanor he once held. He started to let down his guard, revealing more of himself to Ava, sharing with her the deepest thoughts and emotions he had long kept hidden. Conversations that were once brief and formal now stretched for hours, filled with stories of their pasts, their joys and sorrows, their dreams and secret aspirations. One quiet evening, Jacob revealed a painful secret, a profound loss that had left an indelible mark on his soul. "I've never really known how to deal with the pain of losing my mother," he admitted, his deep voice laced with sorrow. "She was the heart of our family. When she passed, everything just felt distant, meaningless." Ava felt a strong wave of empathy surge through her. She understood all too well the agony of losing a loved one, even if their circumstances were different. That moment of raw, heartfelt sharing forged an invisible yet unbreakable bond between their lonely hearts, drawing them closer than ever before. Though they had grown undeniably closer, Ava could never forget the brutal reality of the contract that bound them together. No matter how deeply she found herself feeling for Jacob, the stark truth of their arrangement. The mere 9 months they had together was a constant shadow in her mind, haunting her like a ghost lurking in the darkness. Countless sleepless nights had passed, with Ava lying awake, torn between the new emotions stirring within her and the heavy burden of responsibility she bore. One night, Jacob knocked on Ava's door again, his expression tense, as though wrestling with a decision of great significance. "I know, there are certain boundaries between us," he began, his voice low, before settling into the armchair across from her bed. "But I want you to know that I'm trying to understand what all of this truly means." Ava felt her heartbeat quicken, a flicker of uncertain hope igniting in her chest. There was something in his voice, an honesty, an openness, that suggested he was alluding to a deeper shift, a turning point in their relationship. "I am too," she whispered, her voice trembling but sincere. "I'm trying as well." Jacob nodded slightly, a hint of relief flickering across his face at her candid response. Though the future remained uncertain, both of them knew, deep down, that they were ready to face whatever lay ahead, together. The staff in the estate, who had quietly observed the evolving dynamic between Jacob and Ava, also began to notice the positive changes it brought. Amina, always perceptive and wise, remarked that Jacob seemed softer now, more human, no longer shrouded in the cold detachment that once defined him. Even the other servants could see that Ava's presence had swept away the mansion's once gloomy atmosphere, replacing it with warmth, vitality, and a newfound sense of life. Ava, too, began to feel more at ease in the grand estate. Though the weight of the contract still loomed over her, she no longer saw this place as merely a temporary stop, but as a space where something meaningful was slowly taking shape. And at the end of each day, as she gazed up at the stars twinkling in the vast night sky, Ava knew she was approaching a pivotal moment in her life. The bond forming between her and Jacob was something she had never anticipated, something that had never been part of the original plan. Yet now it felt inevitable, like a fate already set in motion. They were both changing, both evolving, and the journey they had begun together was steadily unfolding, revealing unexpected paths neither of them could have foreseen. The days at the mansion passed quietly, like the slow turning of the pages of life, yet something invisible, undeniable, lingered in the still air of the estate. The relationship between Ava and Jacob was growing deeper and more complex, far beyond the cold confines of a mere contract. Subtle gestures of care, fleeting affectionate glances, and conversations stretching into the late hours of the night, all hinted that the invisible boundaries of their agreement were gradually being challenged, broken by genuine and passionate emotions. But Ava knew that every sweet, warm moment they shared was bringing her closer to a pivotal moment, a fateful crossroads she could not escape. One quiet morning, as Jacob was engrossed in reviewing stacks of documents in his study, Ava stepped in, carrying a tray with a fragrant cup of coffee. He looked up, a flicker of surprise in his eyes upon seeing her, but he said nothing, merely watching as Ava placed the tray on his desk. "I thought you might need a break," she murmured, trying to keep her voice as casual and natural as possible. Jacob studied her for a moment, as if searching for the thoughts hidden beneath her words, then replied in his deep, husky voice, "Thank you. Lately, I've been finding it hard to focus." Ava hesitated for a moment before taking a seat in the armchair across from him, breaking the tense silence between them. "Is it something work-related?" she asked softly, her voice as gentle as a breeze. Jacob shook his head slightly, dismissing her assumption. "Not exactly. There's just too much to handle." Silence settled between them again, not awkward or uncomfortable, but heavy with unspoken thoughts and emotions. Both seemed to be weighing words they had yet to say, struggling with feelings they had yet to fully acknowledge. Finally, Ava broke the lingering silence, her voice barely above a sigh. "Do you feel like you've made the right decisions up until now?" Jacob lifted his gaze to meet hers, and for the first time, his expression softened, a hint of melancholy flickering in his eyes. "You know, Ava," he began slowly, his voice deep and laced with a quiet sadness, "life has taught me to always be practical, rational. But sometimes I wonder if being too rigid, too logical, has made me miss out on things that truly matter." For the first time, Ava glimpsed a vulnerability hidden beneath Jacob's usually strong and resolute demeanor. It was as if he was admitting that their complicated relationship was threatening more than just business obligations and family expectations. It was stirring something raw and deeply personal within him. In the days that followed, the rhythm of their daily lives subtly shifted, evolving into something new. Jacob began inviting Ava to accompany him to important meetings and extravagant social events. He seemed to genuinely want to integrate her into his world, to share with her the weight of the responsibilities he bore. At a lavish charity gala, Jacob introduced Ava to the elite guests as his companion. A ripple of curiosity and whispered speculation spread through the crowd, but Jacob remained indifferent, unbothered by the murmurs around him. For the first time, it seemed that the opinions of others no longer held as much significance to him as his own feelings did. Ava, however, could not help but feel a slight discomfort under the weight of the scrutiny directed at her. "Are you okay?" Jacob asked gently, leading her to a quieter corner of the grand hall. I'm getting used to it," Ava replied, forcing a reassuring smile, though a trace of unease remained in her eyes. Jacob reached for her hand and gave it a light squeeze, an unexpected but comforting gesture that sent warmth coursing through Ava's heart. "Don't worry," he murmured, his deep voice steady and reassuring. "I'm here, right beside you." Those simple yet profound words filled Ava's heart with an indescribable warmth, a fragile yet undeniable hope for a brighter future. Their intimate moments together became more frequent, more natural. Ava noticed that Jacob was gradually opening up, willing to share parts of his life that he had once guarded fiercely. He told her about his lonely childhood, devoid of affection, the overwhelming expectations of the Alpha family, and the immense pressure he carried to uphold and expand their legacy. In return, Ava shared her own life struggles, the hardships of raising Brian alone, the small, quiet joys she had found amid the chaos of life. Jacob listened intently, his gaze filled with a deep understanding that revealed a softer, more human side of him, one that few had ever seen. On a moonlit night, as they strolled through the moonlight gardens, Jacob suddenly stopped and spoke, his voice laced with quiet determination. "Ava, I want you to know that ever since you came into my life, you've shown me that there's more to this world than obligations and cold contracts. That sometimes we need to make room for something new, something real." Ava looked up at him, surprise and emotion shining in her eyes. Her heart pounded fiercely, overwhelmed by a sweet yet intense rush of feelings. She knew she had fallen for Jacob, the cold, enigmatic man who had slowly revealed his hidden warmth. But she also knew that the contract that bound them remained a formidable barrier, an invisible yet unyielding wall between their longing hearts. The mansion's staff, those who had quietly observed the unfolding story between Jacob and Ava, had also begun to notice the undeniable changes between them. Amina, the perceptive housekeeper who always watched with warm and knowing eyes, started treating Ava with growing fondness, as if she were already an integral part of the Alpha family. Other employees exchanged knowing smiles whenever they saw Jacob and Ava together, walking side by side, hands entwined, their gazes filled with unspoken affection. And yet, despite the undeniable shift in their relationship, Ava could not ignore the weight of reality pressing down on her. With each passing day, the end of their contract loomed closer, and the fear of losing everything, including the bond she had painstakingly built with Jacob, gnawed at her relentlessly. One late afternoon, as Ava sat quietly in the grand library, lost in the pages of a book, Jacob suddenly entered, his expression unusually serious. "We need to talk," he said, his deep voice steady, yet carrying an undertone of tension. He closed the library doors behind him, as if sealing them away from the rest of the world. Ava placed her book down slowly, sensing the gravity of the moment. "What is it, Jacob?" she asked softly, a hint of worry in her voice. Jacob took a seat across from her, his hands clasped tightly together on the table, as if holding back a storm of emotions. "We need to discuss the future," he stated firmly. "I know the contract is clear about what happens after the baby is born, but things have changed, Ava." Ava held her breath, her heart momentarily stopping. She had known this moment would come, but she had never truly prepared herself for it. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jacob's gaze locked onto hers, unwavering and resolute. "I want to consider other options," he said, his voice steady and determined. "I don't want you to just leave." Ava's heart pounded wildly in her chest. What Jacob had just said was exactly what she had secretly longed to hear, yet an inexplicable fear still held her back, keeping her from fully believing in the possibility of a miracle. "And what does that mean?" she finally asked, her voice trembling with both hope and uncertainty. "It means we need to find a way to make this work together." Those words echoed in Ava's mind. She knew the situation was complicated, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of hope. In the days that followed, Ava and Jacob gradually opened their hearts to each other, sharing their deepest fears and vague hopes for the future. Both began to realize that they were facing raw, intense emotions that far exceeded the initial calculations and arrangements of a contract. Ava started dreaming of a bright future, one where Jacob and her son, Brian, could build a happy home filled with the laughter of children. Meanwhile, Jacob slowly began to see the possibility of turning his dream of a real family into reality, a true home that was not merely bound by obligations and responsibilities. Though the road ahead remained fraught with challenges, Jacob was still haunted by the heavy expectations of the Alpha family, while Ava struggled with the reality that her life would never return to the way it was before. Yet, amid these trials, they found a remarkable strength in each other, like two fragile saplings leaning on one another to withstand the storm. One quiet evening, under a sky glittering with countless stars, they stood together on the windy rooftop terrace of the mansion, taking in the view. Jacob turned to face Ava, his gaze softer and warmer than ever before, and spoke words she would never forget for the rest of her life. "I once thought love was nothing more than a distant, frivolous concept. I never truly understood what love was, until you walked into my life, Ava." Tears of happiness welled up in Ava's eyes, rolling down her delicate cheeks. But this time they were not tears of sorrow or pain, but of overwhelming joy. She knew that, no matter how many obstacles lay ahead, something profound and extraordinary had taken root between her and Jacob, a deep, unbreakable connection that went beyond mere human calculations and arrangements. The grand, opulent mansion, once cold and isolated, now carried the potential to become a true home, filled with warmth, love, and happiness. And the invisible bond between Ava and Jacob now felt stronger than any contract ever written. As the golden hues of sunset bathed the mansion in a soft, warm glow, Ava sat quietly in the tranquil music room beside a grand piano, one of the few peaceful sanctuaries she had found within the vast estate. She gently let her slender fingers glide across the ivory keys, producing a melancholic melody that echoed the stirrings of her soul. Jacob entered the room silently, his expression pensive and deep in thought. "Did you teach yourself to play?" he asked in a low, husky voice, breaking the gentle flow of music. Ava looked up at him, momentarily surprised, before offering a soft, warm smile. "My mother taught me when I was little," she replied, her voice as delicate as silk. "It was an invisible thread that connected us, even through the hardest days of our lives." Jacob nodded slowly, stepping closer before settling beside her on the piano bench, his eyes following the graceful movement of her fingers over the keys. "You have a natural gift for music," he murmured, his voice carrying the weight of genuine admiration. Ava could still sense the unspoken tension lingering between them, yet she chose to remain silent. After a moment of quiet contemplation, Jacob finally spoke again, his voice lower, laced with an emotion Ava couldn't quite decipher. "Ava, I've been thinking a lot about everything we've shared, about the strange and wondrous path that has led us to this moment." Ava's hands stilled on the piano as she turned to face him, her eyes searching his deep, unreadable gaze. The seriousness in Jacob's expression made her realize that whatever he was about to say was significant, something that could change both of their lives forever. "So, have you reached a conclusion?" she asked, carefully keeping her voice steady despite the anticipation welling inside her. Jacob took a deep breath, as if gathering every ounce of courage before finally voicing the words Ava had. When they returned to the estate, the atmosphere between Ava and Jacob seemed lighter, more relaxed, like a summer downpour that had just passed, washing away all the dust and stifling heat. Yet, both of them knew that unresolved issues still lingered, like hidden reefs beneath the calm surface, harboring the potential for unexpected storms. Ava spent many sleepless nights, wrestling with the difficult choices she faced and the far-reaching consequences they would have on her son, Brian's, future. She understood that to truly move forward, she had to confront the pain she had long buried within herself and cast away the fear and uncertainty clouding her mind. One quiet night, as Ava stood on her balcony, gazing at the star-studded sky, Jacob unexpectedly appeared beside her, carrying 2 steaming cups of tea. He handed one to her without a word, then stood quietly next to her, both of them sinking into the silence of the night. "You know, Ava," Jacob murmured, his voice deep and husky, as if revealing a long-held truth, "I never thought I would meet a woman who could make me question everything I've ever believed in." He turned slightly, his eyes meeting hers, filled with unspoken emotions. "You've shown me that life can mean so much more, that there is still an expanse beyond duty and expectations." Ava gave him a faint, tearful smile, her eyes shimmering with quiet joy. "And you've shown me," she replied in a trembling voice, "that we can find strength even in the midst of pain that seems insurmountable." "I wouldn't have made it this far," Jacob said softly, sincerity woven into every word, "if it weren't for you, standing by my side." In the days that followed, Jacob took deliberate steps to shift the dynamics of their relationship. He carefully reviewed every clause in their unyielding contract, and, though the terms regarding the child's future remained unchanged, he openly expressed his desire to seek a fair, mutually satisfying resolution for both of them. Ava felt an unfamiliar sense of relief, yet a lingering unease still gnawed at her. She knew the road ahead was fraught with obstacles, but for the first time, she sensed they were moving in the right direction, toward a future that was no longer dictated by rigid agreements but shaped by their own choices. Even the estate staff began to notice the remarkable transformation in Jacob and Ava's relationship. The cold, distant aura that had once surrounded Jacob seemed to soften, replaced by an unexpected warmth, while Ava appeared more confident and at ease, no longer weighed down by apprehension. One golden afternoon, Amina, the ever-observant housekeeper, remarked to Ava with a knowing smile, "I've always believed that deep down, Mr. Jacob is a kind and compassionate man. He just needed someone special to help him find his heart again." Ava smiled in return, gratitude swelling within her for everything that had led to this moment. While the changes unfolding between her and Jacob painted the promise of a brighter future, she remained keenly aware of the uncertainties ahead. She knew they would have to continue confronting their deepest fears, overcoming barriers together, and building a relationship that extended beyond material obligations. But for the first time, after months of living in the shadow of doubt and worry, Ava felt a fragile yet undeniable hope, a belief that true love could, perhaps, transcend even the harshest trials of fate. As another breathtaking sunset bathed the estate in golden hues, Ava and Jacob found themselves once again on the breezy rooftop terrace, quietly watching the distant horizon. They both understood that the path before them would not be smooth or easy, but they were determined to face whatever came their way, together. The atmosphere in the estate had shifted noticeably. The tension and awkwardness that had once filled the air had given way to something lighter, more natural. Yet, the weight of the future still loomed over them. Both Ava and Jacob knew they stood at a pivotal crossroads, where difficult and definitive choices had to be made, decisions that would ultimately shape the fate of their extraordinary bond. One tranquil morning, Jacob summoned Ava to his office for a serious conversation. The room, usually cold and imposing, felt inexplicably warmer that day. He gestured politely for her to take a seat across from him, and as she did, a mix of curiosity and apprehension swirled within her. "I've been thinking a lot about our agreement," Jacob began, his voice measured but filled with a quiet intensity, "and about everything that has happened since you first stepped into this estate." Ava remained silent, her heart pounding as she anxiously awaited his next words. "When we made this contract," he continued, clasping his hands together on the desk, "my only goal was to secure an heir for the Alpha family. But things have changed." He hesitated for a moment, as if gathering the courage to voice the truth he could no longer ignore. "I can't keep pretending that the feelings between us don't exist, Ava." Ava's heart clenched, a flood of emotions rushing through her, overwhelming joy, but also fear of what lay ahead. This was what she had longed to hear, yet she couldn't help but worry about what it truly meant for them. "And what does that mean?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It means I want to find a way to make this work for both of us," Jacob said, his words steady, deliberate. "I want you to stay, not because of the contract, but because we choose to be together." His confession was like a beacon of hope, yet Ava knew that things would not be so simple. There were layers upon layers to their situation, and before she could embrace this newfound hope, she needed to be certain that both of them were truly ready to face whatever consequences their decision might bring. When they returned to the mansion, the atmosphere between Ava and Jacob became lighter, like a gentle melody following an intense crescendo. Yet, deep within their souls, both knew that unresolved issues still lingered, like gray clouds drifting across the blue sky, obscuring the sun's warmth. Ava spent many sleepless nights, lost in thought, contemplating the crossroads of her life, the difficult choices she faced, and the profound consequences all of this would have on the future of her little son, Brian. She understood that, in order to truly move forward on the arduous path ahead, she needed to summon the courage to confront her unhealed wounds and cast aside the fears and doubts that wrapped around her mind like invisible chains, holding her back. One late afternoon, As the golden light of the setting sun gently bathed the lush gardens, Ava happened to see Amina carefully tending to the vibrant rose bushes near the central fountain, where water droplets sparkled like pearls under the sun. Ava quietly stepped beside the kind-hearted housekeeper, her heart heavy with conflicting emotions. She had made up her mind to open up, seeking an honest piece of advice. Amina, Ava spoke softly, her voice laced with hesitation and uncertainty. Do you think I can truly trust Jacob? Amina lifted her head momentarily, surprised by Ava's sudden question. But then she smiled gently, answering with sincerity and patience. Mr. Jacob is a man of his word, miss, she said. The promises he makes are never empty words carried away by the wind. But he is still just a man of flesh and blood, Ava. And like you, he is also struggling to find that delicate balance between the call of his heart and the weight of his responsibilities. Ava quietly absorbed Amina's heartfelt words, and for the first time in a long while, a sense of relief washed over her, like a cool breeze calming her restless soul. Though the internal turmoil still lingered, she found a small measure of comfort, a flicker of hope, in the wisdom of the housekeeper. The next day, Jacob unexpectedly invited Ava to visit an orphanage nestled within the heart of the bustling city. It was a charitable endeavor he had quietly maintained for years, but this time, the visit carried a different, deeper significance. When they arrived, the orphan children rushed toward them with joyous laughter, their innocent faces beaming with warmth as they embraced their guests with genuine affection. A tender warmth spread through Ava, as she silently observed Jacob interacting with the children. The stern, cold demeanor he often wore seemed to have melted away, revealing a different side, one of gentle kindness and heartfelt concern for those less fortunate. You truly care about them, Ava murmured, her voice soft, moved, as they watched the children play in the courtyard. They remind me, Jacob replied quietly, his eyes reflecting a deep, contemplative thought, that life isn't just about heavy responsibilities and endless obligations, but also about purity, simplicity, and sincerity. He turned to Ava then, his gaze intense, filled with an emotion so raw, so unguarded, that it seemed to set fire to the silence between them. Jacob's words resonated deeply with the emotions stirring in Ava's heart. For the first time, she sensed that he was truly ready to change, to relinquish a part of the rigid control he had always clung to in exchange for something real, something meaningful. When they returned to the mansion, Jacob made a bold, unexpected decision to amend the harsh terms of their contract. He summoned his private lawyers and carefully revised several key clauses, ensuring that Ava would have more freedom in her life and the right to maintain regular contact with her son, Brian, after he was born. As Jacob formally presented the modified contract to Ava, she was overcome with emotion, her throat tightening with unspoken words. Why would you do this?" she asked softly, her voice trembling, her hands unsteady as she took the revised contract. "Because I want you to know," Jacob answered gently, his voice warm and sincere, "that you are not alone in this. I don't want you to feel trapped, suffocated in this gilded cage. I want you to stay, because you truly trust me, not because you are bound by any obligation." Tears of gratitude streamed down Ava's cheeks, but this time they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of relief, of peace, of immeasurable gratitude. The days that followed passed with a quiet harmony, and the bond between Jacob and Ava deepened with each passing moment. Their conversations, once formal and restrained, became effortless, natural. They shared stories of their pasts, their dreams, and even their deepest fears, gradually building a foundation of understanding and trust for whatever lay ahead. On a night illuminated by the silver glow of the full moon, as they sat together on the wind-swept rooftop terrace, Jacob voiced a thought he had long kept hidden. "Ava," he murmured, his voice husky yet filled with anticipation, "I want to meet Brian." Jacob's unexpected request caught Ava completely off guard. She remained silent for a moment, struggling to process his words, her heart pounding in her chest. "Are you certain?" she asked hesitantly, uncertainty flickering in her voice. "I'm certain," Jacob affirmed, his voice steady, unwavering. "He is an irreplaceable part of your life, and I want to know every part of your world." Ava felt her heart swell with emotions, a mixture of apprehension and hope surging through her veins. Jacob's willingness to accept Brian into their lives was an undeniable sign of his commitment, one that suggested something deeper, something more profound than she had dared to hope for. The weight of past uncertainties began to lift, replaced by a fragile yet undeniable hope, a hope that perhaps, despite the scars and struggles, they could build something real together. Returning to the Alpha Mansion, Ava began to feel something profound, a subtle shift within her very soul. For the first time in a long and tumultuous journey, she truly felt that she was building something solid, not just a contractual agreement bound by paper, but an emotional foundation, slowly taking shape between her and Jacob. Their relationship was no longer merely dictated by the rigid terms of a contract. Instead, it had begun to blossom in the fertile soil of trust and genuine affection, like tender shoots reaching for the sunlight after a long, harsh winter. Yet, Ava remained deeply aware that the road ahead still demanded extraordinary courage and boundless patience from both of them, to overcome invisible barriers and build a lasting, happy future. On a quiet evening, as the stars shimmered in the enchanting night sky, they stood together once more on the windswept terrace of the mansion, taking in the breathtaking view. Jacob gently took Ava's soft hand in his gaze warmer and more tender than ever, and spoke a heartfelt promise, one that came from the depths of his soul. I know we still have many challenges ahead, Ava, but I want you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes, to face any difficulty, to make this real. To make our dream of a happy future, more than just a dream. Ava felt a surge of hope rise within her, like a warm flame igniting in her chest. For the first time in her life, she truly believed that a bright, happy future, one where she and Jacob walked together, was no longer something distant and unattainable, but something that could very well become a reality. Life at the Alpha Mansion gradually became familiar, almost comforting, as if she had truly become part of its slow, peaceful rhythm. Yet, the bond between her and Jacob continued to evolve, deepening in meaning and significance. After their emotional visit to Brian, something miraculous had changed within Jacob. He seemed more thoughtful, more attentive, and more present in both Ava's and Brian's lives, as if he had finally begun to open the door to his heart, welcoming the rich and diverse colors of life that Ava had known before stepping into his world. One crisp morning, as they enjoyed the aroma of freshly brewed coffee on the sunlit terrace, Jacob unexpectedly made a bold suggestion that left Ava utterly stunned. I want Brian to live here. His voice was calm, yet there was an undeniable firmness in his words. Ava's eyes widened in shock at Jacob's unexpected proposal. Are you serious? She asked. A few days after giving birth, Ava was resting in her warm bedroom, cradling her tiny newborn in her arms when Jacob quietly stepped in, holding an elegant envelope in his hand. He gently sat down beside her, his expression serious, yet his eyes shone with a soft, warm light, like a flickering flame that warmed Ava's heart. Ava, Jacob murmured, his deep, husky voice filled with affection. I want you to know something. As he spoke, he slowly opened the envelope, revealing a familiar document. Under Ava's astonished gaze, Jacob decisively tore the grim contract into pieces, letting the lifeless white fragments scatter onto the floor, as if shedding an invisible burden that had weighed on both of them for so long. Everything I have done up until today, Jacob continued, his voice thick with emotion, has been for you and for our little family. I don't want anything, not even a cold, lifeless contract, to define or limit our future, Ava. He gently took her soft hand in his gaze burning with a fierce, unwavering love, like an eternal flame that would never fade. Ava, he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion, you have brought a brilliant light into the darkness of my life. You've taught me what true love means, what the sacred meaning of family truly is. I want to spend the rest of my life by your side, raising our children together, facing whatever life throws at us together. With that, Jacob carefully opened a small velvet box, revealing a dazzling diamond ring, its exquisite gem catching the soft glow of the setting sun, just like the pure, eternal love he held for Ava. Ava, he asked, his voice overflowing with hope, will you marry me? Tears of joy streamed down Ava's delicate face, her heart pounding wildly, as if it might burst from sheer happiness. She could barely speak, managing only a choked nod before whispering, Yes, Jacob, I do. From behind the door, where he had been peeking the entire time, Brian, his mischievous little self, suddenly burst into the room and threw himself into his parents' arms, squealing with excitement. We're a real family now, Mom. We're finally a real family. Jacob scooped Brian up into his embrace, holding him close alongside Ava and their newborn. Together, they celebrated this sacred moment, the beginning of a new chapter filled with love, happiness, and hope. The months leading up to the wedding felt like a beautiful symphony, filled with joy and the flurry of preparations. Ava, her heart brimming with happiness, envisioned a grand yet intimate ceremony, one that would deeply reflect her cultural heritage while perfectly encapsulating the extraordinary love story she and Jacob had built together. Jacob, ever the devoted and understanding partner, spared no effort in fulfilling every romantic and heartfelt vision Ava had. The Grand Alpha estate, already majestic in its own right, was transformed into an ethereal setting straight out of a fairy tale. Everywhere, vibrant and exotic flowers were meticulously arranged, their intoxicating fragrance filling the air. Soft, shimmering lights were carefully placed to create an atmosphere that was both dreamy and regal. Every detail in the decor seamlessly blended the mystical elegance of Arabian traditions with the free-spirited modernity of the West, symbolizing the unique cultural fusion that defined Ava and Jacob's love. Finally, the long-awaited day arrived, turning a dream into reality. The golden March sun shone brightly, casting a warm, luminous glow over the lush garden where the ceremony would take place. Ava, draped in an exquisite white gown adorned with delicate gold embroidery, looked every bit like a goddess. Stepping out of a fairy tale. Beside her, little Brian, dressed in a dapper suit, proudly carried the ring pillow, standing like a tiny knight escorting his mother, the princess, to her castle of happiness. As Ava gracefully walked down the flower-laden aisle, Jacob's gaze locked onto her, overwhelmed by a tidal wave of emotions. He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time, mesmerized by her radiant beauty. You look absolutely breathtaking, Ava," Jacob whispered, his voice thick with emotion as he gently took her soft hand, leading her to the elegantly adorned altar. Their vows, though simple and unembellished, carried an undeniable sacredness and depth. They pledged their love, respect, and unwavering commitment to building a home filled with happiness and resilience against life's storms. Under the golden morning light, they sealed their promise with a deep, lingering kiss, an eternal testament to their love, eliciting warm applause from the distinguished guests present. The reception that followed was a magnificent celebration, a seamless blend of tradition and passion. The enchanting rhythms of Arabic music intertwined with the soulful melodies of Ava's homeland, creating an atmosphere that was both festive and romantic. Brian, full of excitement, ran around the hall eagerly. Embracing his new reality, a life with a little brother on the way and a loving, complete family he had always dreamed of. This is the beginning of everything I ever wished for," Ava murmured, her voice trembling with emotion as she took in the breathtaking scene before her, standing beside Jacob, the man destiny had chosen for her. "And this is only the beginning, Ava," Jacob whispered in return, his voice a soothing promise as he held her delicate hand, sharing in her boundless joy. As the night deepened, beneath a sky glittering with a million stars, Jacob and Ava swayed together in a graceful dance, encircled by the love of their family and dearest friends. They celebrated a love that had triumphed over all barriers, all judgments, blossoming into something truly profound and unbreakable. It was the perfect ending, an ending that marked not just the closing of a tumultuous chapter, but the dawn of a new one, filled with hope, love, and eternal happiness. As Ava tenderly gazed at their sleeping newborn cradled in her arms, she and Jacob exchanged affectionate looks, silent yet filled with unspoken vows of a bright future. They knew, no matter what challenges lay ahead, they had everything they needed: true love, unyielding unity, and a family that would only grow stronger with time. And so, under the twinkling desert stars, Jacob and Ava's love story closed one chapter, only to open a new one. A journey filled with boundless love, unwavering hope, and everlasting happiness. Do you think Ava made the right decision in forgiving and marrying Jacob? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate this story? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated with all our stories. And be sure to check out more heartwarming tales by clicking here on the end screen.